Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video from Fablestan. Okay, that was kind of lame. Hey guys, this is Kim back with another video, and in honor of Camp NaNoWriMo, if you don't know what that is, it's basically National Writing Month, but in April. So it's called Camp Writing Month or Camp National Writing Month. So again, it's just like the November one. Basically, it's where you sort of set a word count for every day and then you marathon through a writing project and then you try to complete it within 30 or 31 days. But yeah, I actually don't have a writing project. I'm not really talking about writing a novel per se, but in honor of the spirit of National Writing Month, so I thought I would do something writing related or just something that's related to creating content, but that's more textually based. So it could be, if you're writing a blog post or if you're making a video, something with lots of information where you need to organize your ideas and everything. Yeah, I'm just going to be telling you what the writing process is. And this is kind of sort of in the context of academic writing. If you pick up a college writing textbook or if you pick up, tips about writing an essay, this is kind of the standard sort of what you need to do when you're creating a, this is kind of modeled after like the process of writing an essay, but obviously if you're not writing an essay, this is equally applicable. Like I use it for all my content creations before I write a blog post, when I need to make a video, all that jazz. So basically this is the writing process, and which consists of a couple of steps, such as the pre-writing, the actual writing, and then the editing or post-writing. So yeah, I'll be going through this writing process with you, and then just this process of creating content, and you can see if you if it's relevant for you or not, and you can give it a shot. But I would say though, from the perspective of an English tutor, if you are writing something, brainstorming and outlining, those two cannot be skipped, because it just saves you so much time, and then it gets your ideas going. You can organize your ideas beforehand, because if you're doing that while you're writing it, it's just extra work. It's kind of like you're trying to build a house while coming up with the design of a house, but if you have the blueprint ready, then you can just follow your blueprint and then make adjustments when necessary. So yeah, so that's what the writing process does, or how these steps can help you. It's to give you like a more structured and organized way of bringing your ideas out, putting your ideas together, realizing them on page or in video and stuff like that. This is kind of like the first time where I really share stuff from my English tutoring sort of self. I don't know, but I thought I would make a video out of it just because I enjoy talking about writing, and I guess it's fun to talk about it in this context where, you guys are creative entrepreneurs, you're writing creative content, or you are just creative people putting stuff out there. So yeah, hopefully this video will inspire you and help you, and just take this with a grain of salt as well, because everybody's writing process is different. But I would still say that pre-writing part, like brainstorming and outlining, is going to save you a lot of time, and it'll really help you hone in your, like, bring out your ideas better. And you should have some kind of pre-writing practice. Like, that's all I'm saying. Let's start. So the first step when it comes to creating content or writing a blog post or writing if you're really writing an essay or something, the first step, the really important step, is you should always brainstorm. So usually we would be struck by an idea, we would feel inspired to write about something. Before you actually turn into a blog post or a video, it's super duper helpful if you brainstorm it first, if you sort of explore the idea first. So there's a couple of ways you could do this. The top three, or the three most common writing tools or ways in which you could brainstorm, and you could find this in any sort of essay textbook or online writing resources or college writing center resources and stuff. One of them is the mind map, and you've probably seen this before. I've done some mind mapping for tarot. Like if you're studying for tarot, mind mapping is a really good way to explore a metaphor, explore a single tarot card or something. But mind mapping really is a great visual tool to help you explore your ideas, make connections, categorize your ideas. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, here's an example. I made it a bit neater than my usual mind map. So this is the mind map I did for this video. right? So I'm going to talk about content creation, and then you just let your ideas flow. So you don't really have to structure it at this point because you're brainstorming, but I think usually a blog post or video is pretty self-contained. Like it's not going to be, you're not writing like a 10-page essay, so it's not going to be, it's not going to get that messy, it's not going to get that big, but it could potentially, right? So yeah, what you do is you note down your ideas, right? You would start to branch out. Usually start with bigger ideas, you would branch out even more. You come up with examples, more information, and then as you sort of put down more points, you would put them into different categories. You would make different connections, like you see what I did here, right? I would try to group things together. I love the mind map because you can visually see where your ideas are going. It's really a map of your ideas. So I think it has the visual and textual element, and it really helps you see where your ideas are, what categories they are, and how you can put them together. So that's one way you could brainstorm. And another way to you could brainstorm is if you don't really prefer this kind of visual style, you could always just do a bullet point / list. Basically, just note down whatever idea, just do a list, just straight down. I don't have it on page, on this pager, pager on this, try to say page, but then start to say paper. I don't have it on this page, but I don't know why I'm so like, what's the word? I don't know why I'm so jumpy right now. But yeah, it must be all the tea I'm drinking. I drank like 3 cups today. And also had a lot of rice crackers, and it's kind of sugary. It's not as sugary as the other junk foods, but it's still pretty sugary. Anywho, basically, yeah, you just do a bullet point, just be like, okay, 1 idea, 2 idea, 3 idea. You got the point, just do a huge list, just note down whatever it is you're thinking about. You can draw arrows, underline stuff, and whatever, but basically you just note down all of your ideas in a linear fashion, one after another. And after you do that, you obviously organize it, but we're going to get to that in a second. So yeah, that's the second way of brainstorming, which is to do a list, to list down your ideas. And the third way of doing brainstorming is called free writing. And free writing, if you haven't heard of it, or if maybe you remember it from your high school days or middle school days where your English teacher asked you to do a free writing exercise, basically what you do is you would just, so you have an idea that you want to explore, you would take that idea, you would just, I really call, like, free writing, I call this writing the vomit draft, because you literally just vomit every single one of your thoughts out without filter. It could be stream of consciousness, it just could be whatever you're thinking about. You just dump it onto the page. You don't have to worry about grammar, you don't have to worry about sentences making sense, you don't have to worry about structure, but just write everything down in a paragraph form. And usually you would set a timer for this. For example, you're going to free write for 15 minutes. And for 15 minutes, without thinking about anything else, just exploring the idea, just expanding on the idea, you would just write for 15 minutes. And yeah, and when the timer rings, you would stop and just look back on your ideas and to see what are some of the stuff you can use. Which leads me to my next point. After you brainstorm, you will want to do an outline. So when you outline is when you put your ideas together, when you organize it, when you make connections, when you categorize, basically put them into boxes, and then you sequence these ideas and you decide what are you going to talk about, what your focus is, how are you going to maintain that focus, yada yada yada. If you remember the hamburger essay, and you have to do like a really rigid outline for that. It's kind of like the same idea. Well, it is the same idea, you're doing an outline, but I feel like since, like I said before, blog posts or videos, they're pretty self-contained, and it's more, I guess it's not, you're not writing academic literature, so it doesn't have to be super tight or super duper structured, but I feel like it does help when you figure out like, okay, you need to present this idea first, then you need to talk about this next idea. So I think it definitely helps that you're keeping track of the general shape or the general map of your blog post or your video, the video you're gonna make. Video is actually a different story, but just wait. Okay, so what did I put down for outlining? See, this is why you do an outline. You can check your ideas. Yeah, so you organize your ideas, you sequence them, got that. Oh yeah, and this is the most important part. You want to ensure the points you're making, they align with sort of the central message or focus. For example, if you're writing a blog post about productivity in the lens of in the context of the Tarot Archetype High Priestess, which is the post I just wrote. So just to give you an example, when I was working on that post, I did the brainstorming, I did the outlining, And you know, High Priestess is usually about intuition and connecting with the divine and creating a quiet space for yourself. When I was sort of doing the outlining for that post, I really wanted to I wanted to talk about intuition, but I feel like the general message of that post was to give yourself time and space to process the information, to process your experiences. And you do that by being introspective and by having like quiet time and to have a inner conversation with yourself. And so I kind of stuck with that, and I just didn't talk about intuition, which is usually what you talk about when you talk about High Priestess. But I kind of feel like when I was working on the ideas, that the most prominent message that I wanted to send was you need to be able to have that inner dialogue. You need to process your information, like process all the information and experiences that you've had, so you can make a better decision from there. I feel like that's kind of the central theme I wanted to go for, and intuition didn't really have a place in that blog post, so I just didn't include it. So this is another great thing about outlining, is sometimes you would have this one thing or this little one segment of an idea that you really want to talk about, that you really want to write about, but it doesn't jam with the rest of your blog post or video, and you're really tempted to keep it in your video. But I think it is best to just save it for something else. You know, you want to develop that fully so it could become its own creature instead of like being this weird appendix on this other bigger creature and just ended up looking really weird, which hurts both of your pieces, so you know what I mean. So outlining does that for you, helps you see the big picture, how your blog post is going to turn out, so that's why outlining is really great. And yeah, after you outline, so that was step 2, you do step 3, which is you do your first draft. So when it comes to blog posts, it's really easy, right, to conceptualize. I mean, you write a first draft of your blog post. You just write following your outline. So a tip I want to give to writers when you're writing your first draft is, I know we all have a perfectionist tendency when we are writing. We want to edit at the same time. We want to check our grammar. We want to check the wording. We want to figure out the right wording. But here's how I want to look at it. If you keep doing that, you're jamming your own flow. Okay, I feel like the most important thing about writing the first draft is you gotta have flow. You just gotta go with the flow. You just gotta go with the flow of your words, even if you can't find the exact word at the time. Okay, I feel like, think of it this way. When you're writing stuff down, say you wrote down a paragraph, but you feel like you wrote down a bunch of fluff, and you feel like your idea isn't that poignant enough, it's not coming out, but you know what it is you're trying to express, and it took you an entire paragraph to sort of drag that idea out of you. That's totally fine. That's the point of a first draft, is you're manifesting those ideas into physical form. You're putting all those concepts and energies and amazing messages you're channeling, everything, you're putting them into words. And it may not be perfect the first time, but that's technical details now, because the most important thing about doing a first draft is to follow your flow and to create that space to work with, so your ideas are there. Your ideas are that space, if you know what I mean, right? You create that space that represents your ideas. You're putting your idea down on the page, and then once you finish your first draft, you go back and you change the technical things, right? You change the right wording, and then you structure your sentences in the right way so your idea would communicate in the best way possible. So when you do your first draft, make sure, just don't hold back, don't think about editing, don't think about what other people are going to say about this, don't think about your audience, just think about what you want to write, what your ideas are. Because after you have your ideas down on a page, then that's when the magic happens. Well, actually the magic happens when you write, but the technical magic happens. That's when you really polish your words and everything. So I know this is probably like, been said so many times, but I really believe that when you're writing your first draft, when you really feel like you're in tune with your inspiration, when you're in the state of inspiration, you are making space for your ideas. Like, you're allowing your ideas to come down into physical form by typing them down. And sometimes you might be channeling one sentence, but it might take you an entire paragraph to write it out. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I remember this metaphor from Wei-Sin Choi. He's a Asian Canadian author. He says writing is kind of like carving a statue. You're gradually and slowly revealing the shape. So sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes 10 seconds to get the right sentence. Sometimes it takes maybe an hour, but you know, I feel like that's just a process you have to go through. It doesn't represent how much you have done or haven't done. You just have to allow that process to happen first, and then you look at the technical stuff. So yeah, that's for writing. And I feel like for video, it's a little bit different because at least from personal experience, when I do an outline, sometimes when I do a video, my brain starts to structure it differently. I started to go with I started to have a different flow, right? When you're writing, it's almost like it's not happening in real time. You could kind of take pause. I mean, I guess videos too, you can always edit stuff out, but I feel like when you're making a video, you want to have that flow organically on screen, if you know what I mean. So I feel like video is a little bit different. I think for videos, I would recommend that when you do an outline, just make sure your key ideas are there. Kind of just write down the things you don't want to miss. Like, I don't do extensive outlines for my videos anymore because I used to do that, and I kind of just found out that I didn't really follow them to the T. So I just realized that, okay, what I should do is just, I would just make sure I put down important points that I didn't want to miss, and I would just make sure I address those points, and I just check my outline from time to time. Like for this video, I just wrote down a very, very brief outline. Just wrote down the basic writing process, the things I needed to talk about, but I didn't do an extensive outline. Like say I would do like a longer blog post, it might be a longer outline, that kind of thing. Okay. So, the last part after you do your first draft is you edit. If you don't edit, something's wrong with you. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Sometimes you might write a first draft and it flows so well you don't really edit, except for like maybe edit out a few typos. That happened to me a couple of times. And plus sometimes when it's a really simple blog post or video, you don't really need to edit, right? So earlier what I said about not editing was just a joke. Sometimes you don't really need to edit much. But yeah, when you do edit, I feel like the most important thing is you want to look at your thesis, I guess. You want to look at your focus. Are you conveying the message that you want? Like, going back to what I said before, if you have an idea that's really something that you want to keep, but it doesn't jam with the overall vibe of your post or video or anything else that you're writing or creating, it's best that you save it and develop it somewhere else. Because if you just keep it in there just because you want it there, it's going to be this weird appendix, like I said, on a separate creature, and it's just going to look really odd. It just feel like a whole thing, and just feel like it's going to disturb the overall flow. So I guess just be aware of that. And here's a few tips when it comes to editing. When you're editing, sometimes when you're reading through the text, this is mostly for writing, by the way, sometimes when you're reading through a text, you can't really spot the difference, but a good way to do that is, 1, read it out loud. Number 2, have someone read it out loud for you. Or number 3, have someone take a look for you. Have another pair of eyes look at it for you. But if you don't have another person available to do that for you, try switching the font of your text. Switch it to something that's very different. If you use like say Times New Roman, it's more like blocky and squarey and more, I forgot what the font term was. My font vocabulary is really poor, okay? Don't judge me. So basically, if you're using, say, Times Roman, switch it to something completely different and out of whack. Like, dude, Comic Sans, because it's rounder, like the shape is different. And another example would be if you're doing Arial, change it to Poor Richard or something. Like, change it to a completely different shape sometimes, or most of the time it really helps you catch those mistakes, or, typos or grammar mistakes, or, stuff like that. And yeah, in addition to switching fonts, you can also switch interface. So for example, if you wrote it on WordPress, you could just copy and paste it, post it on Word, or post it on OneNote, or read it on your cell phone. Change screens, right? Kind of change the environment, change your working space. Because sometimes your brain gets so used to looking at one thing, it would start to autocorrect. It would just start to rationalize things for you. That's how our brain works. It wants things to make sense, so it would do that for you, which is bad when you're editing, because you want to catch all the bad stuff and edit out all that bad stuff, and then leave all the good stuff. Changing things up could really help. Oh, the other thing if you could afford to do this, if you don't mind printing it on a piece of paper every single time you type something, which isn't too bad, I guess, unless you're writing like a 10-page blog post, which is probably not going to happen because nobody reads a 10-page blog post. At least I don't. It depends on the topic, but you know, first worlders, we have really short attention spans, so usually we want to keep it short. But my point is, when you need to edit, this is another thing you could try. You could try just printing it out, do double space or just 1.5 spacing, leave some room in between. This allows you to mark things, underline things, highlight things, but like jot down notes, do an arrow and like a little like side note or end note. You could kind of say, oh, I want to explore this idea more, or I need another good example so people to get what I mean. Or, oh, actually I need to put a link for this, or I need to make sure I credit the photo, or I need to make sure I want to do another credit to another link this to another tarot reader or something. So, you know, like sometimes when you look at a screen too much, like it really you get jaded. But when it's on paper, at least for me, when it's on paper, it's a different mindset. So that helps you catch mistakes too. Is basically the whole point of editing, or just kind of the central theme of the tools of editing, is you should try to trick your brain into thinking that it's something completely new, so you can look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. Your eyes, but you know, it's just a different perspective, I guess. So those are some tips for editing. But yeah, that's it. That was the whole writing process. And I would say the most important part is, if you're really, the big takeaway is you gotta brainstorm and pre-write. Like brainstorming and outlining is like 60-70% of the work, I feel. Because once you explore your ideas, once you get all your ideas down, it's really a breeze after. At least that's what you know, what works for me. So I don't know about you, give it a try, let me know. And I think to close, I never suffer from writer's block anymore. I think that's because this is a really big topic, but I would say if you suffer from writer's block, how I overcame having, you know, writer's block is, number one, you need to know who you are as a writer. Number two, you need to kind of do a lot of shadow work and psychological unwinding when it comes to stuff like maybe feeling insecure, feeling the need to be perfectionist, or feeling the need to write a certain way. So I feel like if you're trying to be someone else, if you're trying to write like someone else, if you're trying to write in a certain, like, in a different style that is not you, you will always have that writer's block because you're not being yourself. And yourself and your spirit always wants to be itself, or just yourself. So when you're trying to be someone you're not, then you're always going to be conflicted when it comes to flow, because you're trying to go one way and your spirit is trying to go another. So when it comes to writing and creativity, I have a more spiritual view where I believe creativity is energy, it's the truest expression of your soul, blah blah blah. Another video perhaps, but I feel like if you're having writer's block, the most important thing is to figure out how you can be authentic and how you can be yourself and how you can connect with your true voice as a writer or an artist, and kind of just find out who you are. You know, if you come from that place, there's no way that you can get a writer's block, because how can you get a block from being yourself, right? You're just being true to yourself, you're just being yourself. It should be like a natural thing. So that's my really short tip for having writer's block, or just a creative block. And you know, other than that, just a quick add-on. Sometimes it could just be external stress as well. I mean, like stressed out by the environment, stressed out by people's expectations of you, you know, like, or expectations from society about how a person like you with your kind of background should behave. So there's that too. But I guess that ties into being authentic and being creatively bold and boldly you, and kind of just connecting with that inner sense of self and your inner spirit. When you write or create or draw or make videos, should always come from a place that is you. Then you would never get stuck, because you would always be in the flow. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. Let me know if this writing process speaks to you, and if you want to find out more about this, it's literally all over the internet. Just type writing process, and then you would find it on a lot of academic websites, or go to the library, visit the writing section, and blah, 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 blah. That's it. Let me know if it's helped you or not, or if you have your own writing practice or writing process or creating process. Yeah, see you next time. Yeah, until next time, be the hero of your own story. Yeah, I don't know why I keep blanking out. See ya!